to another episode, actually a follow-up episode. Given how deep the rabbit hole goes, I think it's only right that we balance out the prior presentation with a few more sources. So we've got on the first hand, in the form of Craig Murray, a former ambassador, a former diplomat turned whistleblower. So you could easily say that he's someone with skin in the game. Yeah. And then you have two more sources we're going to explore here. One is the iNews Essential Daily Briefing, which is perhaps an insight or a perspective or an example of mainstream media in the UK. Let's see what they have to say about it. And then we've got the Russians, Sputnik News, right? Cool. So let's get into it. First of all, iNews. The title of this article is Jeremy Corbyn Foreign Office investigates reports that Labour leader was attacked online by a government-funded body. Written by Jen Selby, and as always, I will post the article link in the description. The Institute for Statecraft, which is based in Fife in Scotland, which in the prior episode has been addressed, was originally given Foreign Office money to counter online Russian propaganda. Foreign Office Minister Sir Alan Duncan MP has launched an investigation into reports that the government provided thousands of pounds to fund a company that spread negative comments about Jeremy Corbyn and his staff online. Scottish-based company, the Institute for Statecraft, which is based in Fife, was originally given Foreign Office money to counter Russian propaganda online. However, according to leaked documents published by the Mail on Sunday, it also promoted tweets branding the Labour leader a quote-unquote useful idiot and suggesting he helped the Kremlin cause. Quote, I don't know the facts, but if there is any kind of organization for which we are paying, which is involved in domestic politics in that way, I would totally condemn it. Plausible deniability, anyone? And I have already, over the weekend, asked for a report to be on my desk by 10 o'clock this morning to say if there is any such activity. End quote. Sir Alan said about the report on BBC Radio 4's Today programme on Monday. The Conservative Member of Parliament for Rutland and Melton added that he had only learned of the claims this weekend and had launched an immediate review into them. Asked if anti-Labour attacks generated by Statecraft must stop, Sir Alan responded, quote, not only must it stop, I want to know why on earth it happened in the first place, end quote. Even so, it isn't the first time Sir Alan has been asked to respond to queries about Statecraft. Issuing an answer to a written question in Parliament, he showed that in the 2017-18 financial year, the Foreign Office gave £296,500 to Statecraft's Integrity Institute. Again, if you listened to the prior video, you will find us addressing the Integrity Initiative as well. A figure that was set to rise to £1.96 million. The body was set up to counter Russian quote-unquote fake news by employing quote-unquote influential clusters of journalists and researchers throughout Europe to respond to posts on social media debunking false information. Yet the official Statecraft Twitter feed also retweeted anti-Corbyn messages. Quote, his open visceral anti-Westernism helped the Kremlin cause as surely as if he had been secretly peddling Westminster tittle-tattle money for money. End quote. one read, according to The Guardian. Corbyn's chief aide, Siumas Milne, was also targeted when Statecraft retweeted a newspaper report that read, quote, Milne is not a spy, that would be beneath him. But what he has done, wittingly or unwittingly, is work with the Kremlin agenda, end quote. Stephen Dalziel, a spokesperson for the Institute of Statecraft, told the Mail on Sunday that he had been unaware of the tweets about Corbyn. Quote, I'm not the one who controls the Twitter account. If it was criticism of one of our politicians, then that shouldn't be on there. End quote. Again, plausible deniability, anyone? The Institute of Statecraft has since released a statement on the report. Quote, in sharing information about such malign activities, the Integrity Initiative uses Twitter as a key method of sharing knowledge, it reads. This includes the usual Twitter practice of retweeting and liking tweets. However, at no time has the Integrity Initiative engaged in party political activity and would never take up a party political stance. Disinformation and malign influence from rogue states and certain non-state actors are a threat to democratic values and transcend any party political cause, end quote. Shadow Foreign Secretary Emily Thornberry has since branded the initiative, quote unquote, outrageous, and further added, quote, cannot be dismissed as something outside the government's control, end quote. In November, Statecraft's computer system was hacked. Now, the eye goes on to say that, goes on to make an assertion, right? But my question here would be, would we know about this would we know about this institute, the Integrity Institute, the Statecraft, would we know about these organizations but for this hack? And if not, is it not a damning indictment of the state of democracy in our nation? Right. So as I say, we are going to have have an insight into the mainstream media. So this was that. And now let's turn our attention to the Russians, Sputnik News. Right. The title of this article is Integrity Initiative, Foreign Office Funded, Staffed by Spies, Housed by MI5, question mark. This was written by Kit Klarenberg, published on the 13th of this month and updated on the 14th. It's the afternoon of December 11th, and I've just been aggressively turfed from the offices of the Institute for Statecraft, and until recently, virtually unheard of think tank, secreted in the basement of 2 Temple Place, a crenellated Gothic-style mansion overlooking the River Thames. Things started promisingly as Simon Bracey Lane, if you watched the first episode, you'll know exactly who that is, as Simon Bracey Lane, a research fellow at the Institute, welcomed me in the foyer with a warm hello and handshake. His demeanor shifted seismically mere seconds later when I revealed I was a journalist. Quote, you need to leave right now, he intoned urgently, eyes wide and face rapidly growing pale. You haven't arranged to see us. Go right now. Please leave immediately. Leave. Stopping short of physically expelling me from the building, but invading my personal space to such a degree he may as well have done, I made for the exit. Simon shadowing me every step of the way and relentlessly repeating his menacing demands to depart until I was safely outside and the office's heavy oak front door slammed firmly shut. I wasn't overly surprised by his response. Despite receiving millions from taxpayers, the Institute plainly doesn't like outsiders and goes to enormous efforts to conceal its true location from public view. Still, the organization may perhaps need to become comfortable with prying eyes in short order, for it's now at the epicenter of an international political scandal of potentially historic proportions. On November 5th, International Hacking Syndicate Anonymous published a series of internal files it had appropriated from Integrity Initiative, an offshoot of the Institute for Statecraft. The material was explosive, revealing the organization, which claims to be concerned with defending democratic institutions from Russian quote unquote destabilization campaigns, to be an international quote information war effort run by British military intelligence specialists. And we will be getting on to Chris Williamson MP, who has tabled a parliamentary question asking whether Integrity Initiative has received UK government funding. The response, as it was addressed in the I article, was affirmative. And now this Labour representative, Chris Williamson MP, is calling for a full public inquiry into the organization's activities. Back to the article in hand. A screenshot of Integrity Initiative's Russia's project reads as such. Page 8. Oh, no. Page number. It's omitted. The network of networks. The Integrity Initiative was set up in autumn 2015 by the Institute for Statecraft in cooperation with the Free University of Brussels, VUB, to bring to the attention of politicians, policymakers, opinion leaders, and other interested parties the threat posed by Russia to democratic institutions in the United Kingdom, across Europe, and North America. The Integrity Initiative aims to unite people who understand the threat in order to provide a coordinated Western response to Russian disinformation and other elements of hybrid warfare. The nature of this response needs to render counterproductive the Russian tactic of dividing countries internally and from one another. Sounds a lot like the Balkanization attempt in the near Middle East, specifically Syria. But anyway, I'm reading from one of the leaked documents of the Integrity Initiative. This will be the case if each Russian information and influence attack provokes the country targeted into sharing analysis of the attack with other countries in the network on a governmental basis, thereby increasing collaboration and alliance cohesion. NATO's political committee can play an important role here. An effective network is best achieved by forming in each European country a cluster of well-informed people from the political, military, academic, journalistic, and think tank spheres who will track and analyze examples of disinformation in their country and inform decision makers and other interested parties about what is happening. Program outputs. 1. Creating, improving structural mechanisms, tracking, analyzing, responding to Russian malign influence and disinformation. 2. Commissioning in-depth research and conducting analysis of significant events. And 3. Dissemination of knowledge. Team expertise / languages. MDJ, Marie Dikoji, defense specialist, learning Swedish and Russian, Afrikaans, Dutch. Okay, so Dutch and Dutch version 2.0, English, French, German, and Danish. GR Greg Rowett, English. Yusuf Desai. He's a Muslim community specialist, apparently. He knows English, Urdu, Hindi, Gujarati, Afrikaans, and Arabic. And Ewan Grant, whose speciality is a background in Her Majesty's Revenue and Customs. Okay, let's go back to the article. As part of this enterprise, the organization has amassed quote-unquote clusters the world over, lists of politicians, business people, military officials, academics, and journalists who, quote, understand the threat posed to Western nations by Russian disinformation and can be mobilized to influence policy. The files suggest clusters are operational in France, Germany, Greece, Italy, Lithuania, Montenegro, the Netherlands, Norway, Serbia, Spain, and the UK. And there are plans to extend the scheme to every corner of the globe. They also offer numerous examples of cluster mobilization in action. One boasts of the success of Operation Moncloa, an effort to block the appointment of Pedro Banos, an army reservist and author of the Spanish Socialist Party. Pedro Banos, an army reservist and author, the Spanish Socialist Party wanted to make the country's director of national security. So, Operation Moncloa, an effort to block the appointment of Pedro Banos, an army reservist and author, the Spanish Socialist Party wanted to make the country's director of national security. When Banos's candidacy was announced, members of the Integrity Initiative Spanish cluster, including González Pons, spokesperson of the Partido Popular, and in the European Parliament, and Nacho Torreblanco, director of the European Council for Foreign Relations office in Madrid, colluded via a WhatsApp group to flood social networks with anti-Banos messages and provide the Spanish media with a dossier of negative material on the former head of counterintelligence and security for the European Army. The initiative's UK cluster supported their work. Within 24 hours, the planned appointment was dropped. Now, the receipt is provided. So again, as I say, this will all be in the description. But let's read from the snapshot released by Anonymous, giving us an insight into Integrity Initiative. I wonder why the newspaper outlet or news agency, I don't know, I wonder why they didn't give us screenshots of these leaked materials. Probably nothing to see here anyway. Okay, date 7th of the 6th, 2018. Main Integrity Initiative players, Spanish cluster, Nico Di Pedro, leader, Borja Lacheras, and Quique Badia Masoni. Integrity Initiative Team UK, okay, Chris Henson, Simon Bracey Lane, Ben Robinson. Stop Fake Spanish Desk, Alina Mozendez. Serbian Cluster, Helena Milic. Spanish Cluster's activity timeline, midday. Spanish Cluster hear that a well-known pro-Kremlin voice, Pedro Banos, is to be appointed at the weekend of 9th of the 6th, 2018, as the director of the National Security Department, which works closely with the Spanish Prime Minister's office and is very influential in shaping policy. At 2 o'clock, Spanish cluster leader alerts other cluster members and prepares a dossier to inform the main Spanish media. The cluster starts a campaign on Twitter to try to prevent the appointment. At 3:45, Spanish cluster leader alerts Team UK, which activates the Integrity Initiative network to generate international support to prevent the appointment. UK team creates a WhatsApp group to coordinate the Twitter response, get contacts on Twitter to expand awareness, and get people retweeting the material. Publishes opinion pieces written by Nico Di Pedro on Stop Fake Spanish website, which was also retweeted by key influencers. Clusters send material to El Pai and El Mundo to publish. Very important daily newspapers in Spain. And alert contacts at UK and French embassies. Outcome. By 7:45, Spanish cluster assesses that the campaign has created significant noise on Twitter. Contacts in the Socialist Party confirm that the PM has received the message. Some Spanish diplomats also expressed concerns. Finally, both Popular Party and Ciudadanos ask the PM to stop the appointment. Back to the article in hand. While the files don't offer an example of any similar plot in the UK, its cluster there includes Ben Nimmo, a fellow at the Atlantic Council who has repeatedly claimed Labour leader Jeremy Corbyn is being supported by the Russian state through various means, including a, quote, twisted cyber campaign, end quote, without any supporting evidence whatsoever. The Integrity Initiative's official Twitter account has also posted numerous tweets and links to articles attacking Labour, Corbyn. One post said he was a quote-unquote useful idiot in service of the Kremlin. Learning anything about the Institute for Statecraft, let alone contacting the organization, isn't easy. Its minimalist website provides no contact information or address, a web form being the sole means of getting in touch, and likewise offers little clue as to its raison d'etre or services. A section titled Activities being entirely composed or comprised of laconic and virtually impenetrable bursts of corporate jargon. And this is taken from the Institute for Statecraft's website under the section Overview. Promoting peace and security through the skillful use of state power. Statecraft is a skillful, effective, and strategic employment of all the forms of powers modern state needs to ensure the security and prosperity of its people. Jargon. Visitors are told the Institute, quote, promotes peace and security through the skillful use of state power. And furthermore, quote, seeks to grow the capacity for strategic thinking and developing a national competitive advantage, end quote, and, quote, combines its experience and capabilities to enable its people to devise and implement solutions to challenges which it has been commissioned to address, end quote. Moreover, the organization is registered as a charity in Scotland, listing its principal office address as Gateside Mills in the small Scottish town of Cupar, Fife. The same is true of its company's house records. But when Sputnik reporters visited the location, they found Gateshead Mills to be a crumbling, derelict building, with no indication the institute had ever operated there. Providing false information to the Scottish charity regulator is illegal, and a spokesperson for the body has confirmed to Sputnik an inquiry into the institute has been launched. The location of the institute's actual headquarters was provided to Sputnik by British Ambassador Craig Murray, or I should say by former British Ambassador Craig Murray. There's nothing directly linking any of the think tank's named directors to the address, and it's not clear who or what is paying the office's presumably sizable rental fees or even utility bills. Murray tells me, based on his diplomatic experience, there are strong indications the building may have been provided to the Institute by British intelligence. A suggestion not particularly shocking, given the individuals connected to the effort. For instance, the Integrity Initiative senior manager appears to be Chris Donnelly, a reserve officer in the Army Intelligence Corps who once led the military's Soviet Studies Research Center at Sandhurst and was appointed a, quote, an honorary colonel in military intelligence, end quote. In 2005, the same year, Integrity Initiative was launched. Between 1989 and 2003, he was also the NATO Secretary General's Special Advisor for Central and Eastern Europe. Dan Lafayette, a senior operative at the Institute, was previously in the SAS and attached to a regiment running spy cells in Russia. Such experience almost certainly involved cultivating citizens of other countries for intelligence purposes, a discipline that surely comes in very handy when recruiting new cluster members. A leaked briefing note prepared by Simon Bracey Lane, the Institute for Statecraft research fellow, who so vehemently ejected me from their offices, documents how new Integrity Initiative associates were enlisted in the Balkans, Montenegro, Serbia, Greece. Podgorica, 11th to the 13th of December 2017. Drinks with Brian Whitmore. Currently with Radio Free Europe, however, leaving to be a senior fellow and director at Russian Studies at CEPA. Personal observation: as he is moving to DC, as an open Democrat believes, he has been assured he will have to do minimal fundraising, believing he is a strong candidate for US cluster, less of a political target, not clearly linked to military wing in DC. Keen to talk to Institute for Statecraft, contractually obliged in new role to spend significant time in Europe and has yet to talk in London, so is keen to do so. In regard to Integrity Initiative, he will send me list of people to contact about cluster building. Believes the next real focus should center on the Latvian elections and believes we should have a robust cluster formed ahead of that. Has offered to make connections. In regard to our discernment program, describe the work of GlobeSec and their work to teach the power of disinformation to the younger generation. Kremlin critics in numerous countries in the region were courted, sometimes over food and or drinks, and often offered funding. Bullet points list the target individual's sphere of influence, sphere of interest and expertise, and how they can be used to undermine the Russian government and its national and international interests. And on more than one occasion, Simon offers a personal observation on the target in question. For example, noting Sissy and Elias looked scared. Certain topics caused voices to drop, and eyes watched the people who walked past table. A sentence that wouldn't look out of place in an MI5 Hummint report. Lunch. Conversation. Mark Voiger. These are from the leaked transcript. Notes. Interested in Integrity Institute and will send me a list of appropriate people for Integrity Institute. I feel he could be a potential candidate for our German cluster. Discussed his focus, lawfare, how Russia uses the nuance of things like the Minsk treaty to make point 13 the provision Russia will close its border, so providing 13 different stipulations to be fulfilled before it is required to close the border. He is very willing to speak to the Institute. He has a brief prepared that he has given to the US Senate. We discussed his availability in the new year to come to the Institute to discuss the topic. Belgrade, 13th of December 2017, meeting with Helena Milic, who was mentioned earlier, of Serbia. Serbia has given its gas and oil over to Russia. Observation. As you drive into Belgrade, there is a massive sign sponsored by Gazprom that has the Serb and Russian flag combined. It's within this corporate world that Russia is coordinating its operation in Serbia. Youth. There is a prominent youth wing of the Russian Freedom Party who are extremely violent. They are Russia's platform in Serbia and Kosovo, perform acts like heading to Kosovo to protect Serb population. How Kosovo is handled is vital to reforming Serbia, rewriting security documents, foreign policy documents. There are voices advocating for Kosovo to be portioned swap of territories. However, this would have a significant knock-on effect on Macedonia. The current government is pursuing dialogue with KOS. This approach Helena agrees with and is supporting the government in this. She privately has little faith in them, but will support them in this as they are moving in the right direction. She will continue to push for this. Russia is attempting to sideline this process. It's another area we will see an enhanced Russian presence in. Resolution. Will assemble names and contacts of people she trusts to approach with joining Integrity Institute. Important. Contact in private Turkish university. We'll discuss with Stephen the chance of him chairing a cluster meeting. Helena is currently undergoing a staff shortage. One area Russians, oppositions, Serbs have been successful is scaring people away from working with her. There's no indication Simon has a background in the intelligence services, but his professional resume is nonetheless somewhat puzzling. He's been in the media spotlight before. In 2016, appearing in several articles tracking Bernie Sanders' presidential campaigning efforts. For example, in a BuzzFeed piece published in February that year, he's referred to as a, quote, recent university graduate, end quote, who was inspired to join the Labour Party in 2015 after Corbyn was elected leader. At that point, he was holidaying in the US, so he joined the Sanders campaign and never left. Quote, I had 2 weeks left and some money left, so I thought I'll make some calls for Bernie Sanders. I just sort of knew Des Moines was the place, so I turned up at their HQ, started making phone calls, and then became a fully fledged field organizer, end quote. In May the next year, this is Simon Bracey Lane, right? There's a photo of him. In May the next year, evidently having returned to the UK, Simon established Campaign Together, an organization offering training to door-to-door political activists supporting progressive candidates during the 2017 general election, and facilitated, quote, vote swaps, end quote, a role which would have potentially granted him significant insight into the internal workings, strategy, and tactics of the election campaign of several political parties, as well as personal voting intentions. Once the effort ended, he seems to have swiftly moved on to the Institute for Statecraft in October, hosting an event for the organization, Cold War, Then and Now. Again, we looked at the event. We looked at the Eventbrite page and we looked at who was the participant who was invited in our previous episode, at which a panel comprised of Ukrainian nationalists, British military staff, and NATO officials discussed, among other things, the, quote, threat posed to European values and security, end quote, by Russia. It's extremely curious and avowedly impassioned Corbyn supporter of extremely progressive ideological sympathies became so quickly and intimately involved with an organization that has disseminated anti-Corbyn material, sought to enlist harsh critics of Corbyn to its efforts, and worked to discredit left-leaning political figures abroad. Requests for clarity on this seeming incongruity submitted to Simon via the Institute for Statecraft's web form have gone unanswered as of December 13th. Likewise, neither the Institute nor Integrity Initiative have responded to any of the vast number of questions I and other journalists have put to them over the past few weeks. The wall of silence may not be able to endure much longer. Foreign Office Minister Alan Duncan has ordered an official investigation into the Institute, and Shadow Foreign Secretary Emily Thornberry, a target of the initiative's critical tweets, has seized the issue with some gusto. In a parliamentary debate, December 12th, she noted the Integrity Initiative's use of Twitter as a tool for disseminating information had, quote, not been a fringe activity, end quote, but, quote, an integral part of its applications for Foreign Office funding over the past 2 years, end quote. A period in which it has been funded to the tune of £2.2 million by the British state. The budget for its agreed objectives of increasing reporting in the media and expanding the impact of its website and Twitter account amounted to £275,000 in this financial year. In the list of key deliverables it promised the Foreign Office this year, it stated explicitly that one of its instruments of delivery will be 600 plus Twitter followers, including influential players, Thornberry added.
And there is, I'm afraid, absolutely no doubt that the publicly funded Integrity Initiative has broken that rule on a repeated basis by using its Twitter accounts to disseminate articles attacking the integrity of Conservative and Labour officials, of Conservative peers, and, on a repeated basis, the leader of Her Majesty's opposition.
She went on to ask several questions. First, whether Foreign Office officials were monitoring the initiative's Twitter output, and if so, why they didn't flag concerns to ministers about the dissemination of personal attacks. Quote, if not, why was this misuse of public funds going unchecked? Secondly, does the funding agreement governing the Integrity Initiative make clear that its use of funds and its public statements must comply with Cabinet Office rules? Finally, if the government intend to renew that funding for the next financial year, what arrangements and agreements will be put in place to ensure that nothing of this sort ever happens again? She said, end quote. It's shocking. The efforts of the Integrity Initiative have been barely mentioned, much less criticized by the mainstream media since the document trove was released over a month ago. And extremely troubling that after so long, it's still not even clear what the Institute for Statecraft actually is or does, and who or what funds and supports it. With such vast sums flowing from the Treasury straight into its shadowy coffers, British citizens and those of all countries in the organization's cluster crosshairs must be told. Right. So let's have a look at the demands by MPs for public inquiries. It was Chris Williamson, MP, on December 4th, who tabled the parliamentary question that set off this chain of events, which resulted in the response by